our color of the beer, which we'll do in a second, half hour into a mash, half an hour into the mash. We're at 151 exactly. We're just going to test our mash. I use a refractometer because I don't waste nearly as much wort using a refractometer than you would using a hydrometer. It's a little extra step that you have to do in converting bricks, which a refractometer measures into potential gravity. And we're really, really low right now. We're at like 4 bricks. And we still have to add water. It doesn't say that our beer is bad. It just says our beer doesn't have a lot of alcohol. Or potential sugar. Potential alcohol. Where should it supplement? And you know, I keep a good eye on it during the mash to know how much I have to supplement. And I'm not going to supplement until we go into our boil. So this gives me a good indication of how much I need to. And we're probably going to need to add that entire bag to our boil. Of DME Pilsner, so it doesn't change the color too much. Always keep the lightest DME you have, or they have, the home brewer shop has in stock, so that it doesn't change the color of my beer.
You can't get lighter, you can go darker. It's easy to get darker.
It's easy to get darker. Yeah.
Well, what we're doing here, this is called the refractive index. Refraction is the bending of light. So you ever notice when you put like a stick in water, the stick looks like it's broken, but it's really not.
Yeah.
Right? So that's refracting. The light is traveling actually at a different speed through the water. It slows it down. And so if you have sugar, it changes it. This is very commonly used in Florida in the orange juice business. They check it. And bricks is a unit of measure. I don't know exactly what it goes, but it's 4 times the original gravity is the way I look at it. So original gravity, or specific gravity, is the density relative to water. Water is 1.000. So you're shooting for what, a 1050 beer? So that'd be 1.050, or 5% more dense. And when you add sugar, it increases the density. Just like, I don't know if anybody's made candy sugar. It gets really heavy, but the volume doesn't grow. It gets more dense. So that's what your potential alcohol is, because the reaction is that the yeast eats the sugar and produces 2 things: ethyl alcohol and CO2, both of which are good in beer. So 1050, and the way I do it, to just keep the math easy, is roughly 1050 would be about a 5% beer. Just move the decimal point. So bricks is a fourth of that. So 10 bricks, or let's say 40, or 10 bricks would be a 1040 beer. Right. So you're going to be what, 12 and a half bricks would be a 1050 beer. Would be the way to do it. Look at it that way.
I've never known that.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So it's a fourth.
A fourth, right? Yeah, right. Or multiply by 4. Either way, divide by 4. Yeah,
Killer.
It's a factor of 4. Oh, easy rule of thumb. By the way, rule of thumb comes from brewing.
From beer. Yeah.
Right. You know that story?
No.
Okay, had that in
Yeah. So in the old days, before thermometers were used in the brewery, they wanted to get to 150 degrees for the mashing. Well, the brewmaster would literally put his thumb in the mash to check the temperature, and that's where rule of thumb comes from. So another thing you could do too is you could test. I don't know if you do the iodine test, testing for conversion. Yeah, you can either use tincture of iodine, or you don't. You said you don't use amberdine, but you can use either one. But basically, if you were to put a drop of the wort in take a drop of wort, put it on usually I'd use it like a ceramic plate, white small dish.
Yeah.
And then take a drop of the iodine. It'll turn black at the beginning, because what it's doing is it's a reaction with starch.
Okay.
And when you get the conversion completed, there won't be any starch left. And then you'll see that it won't turn black like that. So that's a way to test as well.
Okay.
And it's probably more direct because you're measuring the conversion. Which is what you're doing there. You're converting the starches and the big sugars into fermentable sugars. That's the whole process. The point of the mash is.
Yeah.
And this is a hydrometer tube. So you put the sample in, and you would put the tube in there, and it will float. It's buoyant. It basically measures the buoyancy. So and you can see it's calibrated, and 1.000. If you were to have just water in here, it would float at 1.000. And as you add sugar, it goes up. And you could also measure it during the fermentation process, and you'll notice it drop back down again. Now, wine will go below 1 actually, because
yeast is eating sugar.
Well, beer will never go below 1. Beer, it's called attenuation. How much of the fermentation do you attain? With beer, you typically get 75% attenuation. So if you start at 1050, you'll get down to about 10, 12 and a half, typically. You know, some a little more, some a little less, but that's a typical attenuation. So that's hydrometer. So it's just a different way of measuring it. And so you have to know.
You obviously use a lot more.
I use the
you obviously use a lot more wort
a few
than
ounces,
you do.
right? Versus a few drops. You have to know the original gravity and the final gravity. That's how it doesn't tell you. It tells you the potential, but you have to know how much you fermented out to figure out what your ABV, alcohol by volume,
is. These things are like $6 at Hart's. They break really easy, so buy 2 of them.
These don't break as easy.
No, they don't.